In this lesson, we are going to learn about loops. Now, a loop is a programming tool that repeats a set of instruction until a specified condition called a stopping condition is reached. As a programmer, you'll find that you rely on loops all the time. You will hear the generic term iterate when referring to loops. Iterate simply means to repeat. When we need to reuse a task in our code, we often bundle that action in a function. Similarly, when we see that a process has to repeat multiple times in a row, we write a loop. Loops allow us to create efficient code that automates process to make scalable and manageable programs. Now, why do we need loops? To show that, have a look at an array. So I'm going to take an array and it is going to be called my array. In this array, I'll take five numbers. Now, if I want to log them or print them in my terminal, how do I do that? I can do this console.log my array and I'll take the first element and now I'm going to print it node loops. So I get the first element. Now to get the second element, I just have to copy paste it. Copy paste it, copy paste it, copy paste it. So I'll get the second element, third element, fourth element, and the fifth element. Now if I see, I can get all the elements. 4. This is going to be 4. So I can get all the elements in that array. Now imagine if we had 1000 elements in that array. So is it possible to just type, copy paste all of them? Is it really feasible thing to do? No, it's not. It's not very readable and it's not efficient. And to solve that issue, we use loop. Now let's learn about the for loop. Instead of writing out the same code over and over again, loops allow us to tell the computer to repeat a given block of code on its own. One way to give computer this instruction is with the for loop. The typical for loop includes an iterator variable that usually appears in all three expressions. The iterator variable is initialized, checked against the stopping condition, and assigned a new value on each loop iteration. Iterator variable can have any name, but the best practice is to use a descriptive variable name. A for loop contains three expressions separated by a colon. Inside the parenthesis, an initiation starts the loop and can also be used to declare the iterator variable. A stopping condition is the condition that the iterator variable is evaluated against. If the condition evaluates to true, the code block will run, and if the evaluates to false, the code will stop. And an iteration statement is used to update the iterator variable on each loop. So this is just all talk. Now let's have a look at that in action. Now we have this array. We are going to use a for loop. First, write the keyword for. Then this bracket, then the curly bracket. Now, what are we going to write here? Here, we are going to write an initialization start with the loop and can also be used to declare the iterator variable. So we are going to use, what is this called? The iterator variable. So let's declare this. Let the iterator variable is going to be I and it will start from 0. Then what do we have? A stopping condition is the condition that the iterator variable is evaluated against. If the condition evaluates to true, the code block will run. If it evaluates to false, the code block will stop. So we'll have to give that a condition. So how long do we want the loop to run? We want to print all of this code, right? All of these elements. Now I want to run this loop as long as there are elements in that array. So how many elements are in this array? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I console log it, console log my array dot length, let's see what it gives me. Let me, it gives me 5. So I want my for loop to run less than 5. My array dot length less than 5 times. Now the last condition, an iteration statement is used to update the iterator variable on each loop. So I need to update this. It starts from 0. So I need to update this iterator. So I'm going to update it by 1. Now, if I console log I, let's see what happens. I can see that I'm getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm getting 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I console log the value, so how do I access this value? We used to access this value of my array by putting the index number, right? Index 1. If I want to put the index 1, let me comment this index, then I can see that I can access this. So the I is giving me 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Instead of just this hard-coded 1, 2, 3, 4, if I just put this, uh, if I just put this, and instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, if I just give I, then I should get all the elements printed in my console because it is updating. Now, if I clear this node loops, see, I can get all the elements here. Now, if I say the last element, I can get the last element also. So I can iterate or I can traverse to all the elements in that array using this for loop. Now, let's just say I don't want this to iterate from the beginning. I want to iterate it from the last, traverse it from the last. So if I want to do that, what should be my initial value? Initial value should start from the last element, right? So in this case, I'm going to set my initial value from 0 to my length. It is going to start from the last element. And I'm going to make it as long as I is greater than 0, the loop is going to work. Now, as it is starting from the last element, it should not increase because the length is right now is 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is right now is 6. If it is, if I increase it, the value, then it is going to be 7. But in my array, if I put 7 here, there is nothing. So in this case, we are going to decrease it and put I here. Let's see what happens. See, I'm getting undefined. Let me clear that again. And undefined last element then. So why it is undefined? If I console log it, my array dot length, I can see, let me comment this out, or console table. No. Then console table, my array. Let's see what we get. So we can see that we have the length is 6. But if we look at this table, we can see that our value index starts from 0, there is nothing called 6. This is why we were getting the first element as undefined. And to solve this issue, if we just minus 1 from it, minus array, so the length is 6. If I minus 1 from it, then it will start from the 5. The index will become 5. So it should solve our issue. Let me uncomment this and clear it. Node. Now we don't see anything as undefined. We are seeing everything as we should get. But there is another thing. We are getting till the 2. We are not getting the 1 because we have an element at the index 0. So it should not be greater than 0. It should be greater than or equal to 0. Now if I Now we are getting all the elements there is. Now let's learn about nested loops. When we have a loop running inside another loop, we call that a nested loop. One use for a for loop is to compare elements in two arrays. For each round of outer for loop, the inner loop will run completely. So let me comment this and start nested loop. So let's say we have two elements, two arrays, const array 1, it will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And another array, const array 2, we have 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. Now we want to see if both arrays have a common item or not, common number or not. So how do I do that? We need to use two for loops here. For this, this, and for this, this. So we'll have to use two for loops. In the first for loop, we are going to iterate over this array. In the second for loop, we are going to iterate this array. So let I equal to 0, I less than array1 dot length and I plus plus. Now in that array, I can write for loop, I can write j equals 0, j less than array2 dot length j plus plus. Now we are traversing to both the array. So what does traverse mean? Traverse mean that are going through each the elements. Now we can do is a for loop, if statement, and in that if statement we are going to check something, and if it is true then we will, in this statement we are going to check if array 1, the value of array 1 equal to the value of array 2. In that case we are going to console log the value, and in this case we will console log array 2's value. Let's see. So we can see that 2 and 3 are common. So we should print 2 and 3. Let's see what happens. We can see that we are getting 3 and 7. Why is that? Now here we are comparing the elements from array 1 with the elements from array 2. So we should write console log array2 j. This should solve this issue. So we are getting 2 and 3. Now let's learn about the while loop. A while loop in JavaScript repeatedly executes a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. It consists of the while keyword followed by a condition in parentheses. The block of code to be executed is closed by curly braces. The condition is evaluated before each iteration, and if it evaluates to true, the block of code inside the loop is executed. The loop continues to execute until the condition becomes false. It's important to ensure that the condition will eventually become false, otherwise, the loop will run indefinitely, causing a program to hang or crash. Now, let's have a look at that in action. So, we have this array. We are going to use this array and use the while loop. First thing, we are going to the block of code while keyword followed by a condition in parentheses. The block of code to be executed is enclosed in curly braces. So it is going to be while a condition and then the block of code. So we need to write a condition that will eventually become false, because if we the condition will otherwise the loop will run indefinitely, causing a program to hang or crash. So how can we make it false? If we say that I is greater than um but before that, let me say that I is equal to my array dot length, and as long as I is less than or equal to my array dot length, as long as the I is less than or equal to my array dot length, console dot log my array I. Let's see what it shows us. So it says that the I is not defined. In this case, we are going to say let I equals 0. Let's see what it shows us. Now it is giving me, the loop is continuing. You can see here the loop is continuing. So we need to stop it. So here we have to make sure that this becomes false. But if I equals 0, then it is continuously is remaining 0. We need to increase the counter, just like we did in the for loop. We increase or decrease the counter. So we need to do the same here as well. We can write I plus plus. Now if I print it, I can see that it is showing me all the elements, but it is also giving me undefined, because we don't want it to go beyond that. We can just say length minus 1. Now I can get all the elements. There is another type of iterator, and that is called do while statements. In some cases, you want a piece of code to run at least once and then loop based on a specific condition after its initial run. This is where the do while statement comes in. A do while statement says to do a task once and then keep doing it until a specified condition is no longer met. So let's have a look at that in code. First thing, we are going to comment this out and then write do while loop. And in this loop, I'm going to take this array and I'm going to initialize I. Now I'm going to write do console log my array I. Do this as long as my I is less than my array dot length. As long as my this value is less than my array dot length, do this thing. And JavaScript runs the code from top to bottom. So this will be printed once, at least once, and then it will check the condition if it is true or false. Now we need to increase the counter as well because the I is starting from 0. After doing this, it should increase. Now let's see what our code looks. See, it is showing me all the elements in that array. Now let's learn about the break keyword. The break keyword allows program to break out of the loop from within the loops block. So let me comment this and start break keyword. Let's take an array. This is going to be my array and I'm going to use a for loop. Let I equal to 0, I equal to 0, I is less than num my array dot length, then I plus plus. This console log my array I. Now I'm going to give a condition here. I'm going to say if my array I equals last element, this element, then I have reached a breaking point, and then I will break it. I'll break the loop. So let's give other 7, 8, 9, 10. I have all these items in that array, and if I find that I'm getting this, then I'm not going to not going to, I'm going to break the for loop and I'm not going to go through the other elements. Let's see if it prints or not. So as soon as I have reached the last element, as soon as my loop reached the last element, it just printed that I have reached a breaking point and it is not seeing, it is not traversing through other elements. Now, if I remove this, let's see what it shows me. Now it is giving me all the elements. Now, if I put the break again, now it is giving me, it has reached the breaking point. Now let's learn about the continue keyword. The continue keyword is used in JavaScript to skip the current iteration of a loop, either for while or do while, and continue with the next iteration. So let's have a look at that in action. Let me. So let's use this loop. Instead of giving the console log, I have reached a breaking point. If I write continue, what happens? So it is not doing anything. If I put it here, let's see what happens. So you can see that it is not printing the last element. Instead, it is printing this. So when you want to skip the current iteration of a loop, if this matches this, then you can skip it. If you want to skip printing this last element, I have skipped this element. See, this element, it has skipped. It is not printing the last element. But if I remove it and if I don't console log it, let's see what happens. See, I'm getting the last element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, last element, then everything. But if I put continue, it will skip this. See, there is no last element here. This concludes our lesson for loops.